Viento a viento va el sueño del mar, gira sin parar. Viento a viento va.
So, a week or two back I got my first ever request from a viewer, which was exciting. The game they mentioned was the Immortal for the Mega Drive, or Genesis, whatever. That doesn't ring a bell, but once I checked out some screenshots I realised that I did have some vague memories lingering in the back of my brain. I'd definitely never played it before, but it has an isometric perspective and a distinctive art style which I remember seeing in magazines back in the day. Anyway, I was in the process of making a video on a complex, modern, narrative-driven game, so I figured I might as well take the chance to play something less demanding and more pleasantly simple, which is surely what an old Mega Drive game would be. That was my first mistake. This is the Immortal. That music, pretty damn similar to Shadow of the Beast, isn't it? This should perhaps have been a hint that the Immortal was going to be anything other than undemanding. The next hint comes a few moments later. You start off in this room, approach the candle on the altar, and your old teacher greets you. Except apparently it's not you he's greeting, he's talking to some guy called Dunfrick. And that's all well and good, it's all part of the mystery waiting to be solved. And then you try to move. If you happen to go near the missing floor tile, which I might point out is located in the middle of the space that isn't occupied by the altar, you get a warning to move. And I did try to move, but to no avail. So I was devoured by a giant worm. 10 seconds into the game, having moved a total of maybe 3 meters, and I was dead. That's certainly one way to make an impact on a new player. I even tried it out a few more times, just for my own amusement. There are actually a couple of different animations that can play as you're brutally torn apart, which would definitely have appealed to my youthful sensibilities if I'd played this game when it was new. Anyway, on my next attempt I managed to make it out of the starting room. The sense of achievement is palpable. An orc-type thing approaches, tells me not to interfere, and combat starts. And yep, I have absolutely zero idea what I'm doing. I hit random buttons and occasionally I manage to do something, but whatever it is, it's not enough. I'm dead. Again. At this point it occurs to me that this might be one of those games where you really need to read the manual to have any hope of making progress. So I tracked down a PDF online. And yes, the manual is rather substantial, which gives me a pang of nostalgia for the times when game manuals were actually a thing. There's a brief rundown of the plot, something about an ancient city destroyed by dragons 1,000 years ago, plus instructions on how to attack and defend in combat. Okay, now I've got that bit of wisdom memorised, let's try it out. Okay. I still have no idea what I'm doing. The manual includes some tips about varying your attacks and letting your opponent wear themselves out, but I'm not getting the timing required to duck or swipe with my dagger. I do eventually manage to kill at least this first bad guy, but it cost me a lot of health. And then I wander around the level some more. I get killed by poison darts or something, so I go the other way and find a guy fighting an orc. I kill the orc and get a key from the guy. What could this possibly open? The chest a couple of meters away, of course. In the chest is some gold, some bait, some bad smelling spores, a bottle, and a map. I have no idea what most of those things are for, but at least the map sounds useful. I don't know how to use it though. I find another orc who calls me a foolish old man. It's like he's met me before. And then he kills me. It's definitely like he's met me before. And that's game over. You get 3 lives and then it's back to the start of the level. And for me, it's back to the manual, where they've seen fit to include a complete walkthrough for the first level. A good decision, I think, because this game is definitely not what you'd call accessible. Not that it really helps much. The poison darts are still a pain to dodge. I still have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing in combat. I managed to get through this room with invisible enemies mainly through sheer luck. Fortunately though, enemies don't regain health when you die, so eventually I'm able to brute force my way through to the end of this level. I don't know if I'd ever have figured out that you need to use the amulet to deflect the beam of light in order to open the exit without the walkthrough, but regardless, I make it to level 2. And, oh god, these slimes are almost impossible to dodge. If they get close, they kill you instantly, and sometimes when you respawn, you're standing right on top of one and die again. If you make it to the next room, you find will-o'-the-wisps that kill you pretty damn quick, unless you use the charm you got in the last level. There's a dwarf who taunts you with his gem, which he says you need, but he's not going to give it to you. There's a merchant who offers to sell you slime repellent at a price you can't afford. And anyway, the slimes have already killed me half a dozen times. There are a bunch of orcs that I just cannot kill because I cannot figure out the damn combat. And I'm sorry Silvertane78, but I just can't bring myself to smash my head against this game any longer. I can see the appeal, I honestly can. It seems like an adventure game of a sort that was almost unheard of on consoles at the time, and if I'd played this 30 or so years ago I might have had the motivation to stick with it, and I probably would have enjoyed it. The trial and error, the esoteric nature of the puzzles, the baffling combat, with a younger, more agile mind I might have been able to get on top of it. But now, I'm afraid it has defeated me. So, that's one subscriber offended and alienated. Actually, I'm not sure if they were subscribed. Well, that's okay then. But now let's see if I can offend and alienate someone else. This one wasn't a request as such, more a recommendation from one Stunt Chicken, who has definitely subscribed, so I've got more to lose here. In the comments to my Ori and the Blind Forest video, a game that had a big emotional impact on me, they claim that no game matches Rime for emotional impact, which seems like a big call. And so, since Rime has actually been a game I've been interested in playing for a while now, I decided I might as well give it a look. Will it defeat me in the same way the Immortal did? Spoiler alert, no it will not. This one I managed to stick with to the end. And actually, I should probably give a genuine spoiler alert. Stunt Chicken wasn't too far off the mark. Rime definitely packs an emotional punch, and you might want to experience it for yourself before watching this video. The game starts in a way that immediately put me in mind of Ori and the Blind Forest. This opening scene with the scrap of red fabric being blown along by the storm is highly reminiscent of that game's opening sequence. There's a key difference though. This is an ocean storm, and indeed the ocean itself is a key theme that makes itself apparent in many ways as the game progresses. The storm subsides and you find yourself controlling a boy who is washed up on a sunlit beach. And now, odd as it might seem, the game I'm most keenly reminded of is actually The Witness. That was a rather challenging puzzle game, which Rime definitely isn't, but the graphical style and the setting are really rather similar. More significantly, like The Witness, Rime is a minimalistic game in many ways. There is no dialogue, there is no combat. There are no tutorials telling you what you need to do next or how to do it, other than the occasional button prompt. Everything you need to know is communicated through the environment, and what a gorgeous environment it is. The island you find yourself on is pleasant, even welcoming. There are wild boars, but they won't attack you. In fact, they're rather adorable. You may notice, however, a figure clad in a red cloak looking out over the ocean. You may also notice that the red of their cloak is very similar to the red of the scrap of fabric you have tied around your neck as a scarf. Is this a sinister figure? I wasn't sure, but it did give me a vague feeling of unease, not helped by the fact it disappeared without a trace while I wasn't looking. Your first task is to find the 4 statues that will do something, presumably. You don't know why you're doing it just yet, but the fact they emanate a beam of light high into the sky makes them obvious destinations. You activate them by shouting at them, whereupon an orb of light bursts out and heads towards the central statue, another wordless but very clear indication of what the game expects of you. While you're doing this, the sun sets and the game's excellent lighting comes to the fore as the colours of the land, the sky and the sea deepen towards dusk. The graphical style is fairly simple, but everything is crafted with enough artistry to be truly beautiful, especially when bathed in the varying tones of an ever-changing day-night cycle. Speaking of beauty, then there's the music. It's mostly subdued, but it swells in volume at significant moments, and it's invariably fantastic. And as the game progresses and the mood shifts, the music follows suit, but more on that later. With all 4 of the small statues activated, you can return to the central area, where you'll find... Oh man, I love foxes, and this little guy is just amazingly cute. From now on he'll be your guide, running ahead and drawing your attention to where you need to be. On that topic, even without words, Rime is a game that takes great care to guide you through its world. It could be argued, in fact, that it takes a bit too much care. The word that kept occurring to me as I played was undemanding, basically the opposite of the Immortal. So long as you pay attention, you rarely have to wonder where to go next. Even when your fox friend isn't present, the game usually ensures that the camera is pointing to the next path you should take. There are a few occasions like this first statue hunt where you need to find objects scattered around the environment, but they're always highlighted and visible from afar like these were. This is not necessarily a bad thing. It can be pleasant sometimes to play a game that presents you with a gorgeous world to traverse without also requiring that you memorise every inch of it in order to figure out where you need to go next. And it should be pointed out that there are quite a few secrets hidden throughout the game. Some of them are fairly obvious, but a lot of them aren't, and exploration will be required to track them all down. Furthermore, some of those secrets are directly related to the game's subtle narrative, and there is a payoff for tracking them all down, which I regret not doing. It should also be noted that this is not a difficult game. Again, this is not necessarily a bad thing, certainly not from my perspective at least. As I mentioned, there's no combat apart from a few minor scuffles with a certain inhabitant of these lands that I'll show soon enough. The platforming is fairly straightforward and doesn't require any particular dexterity, and if you do manage to fall into a bottomless pit or from too great a height, the game tends to start you back only a few meters from where you stumbled into oblivion. So it's fair to say this is not a game about challenge. Regardless, I still enjoyed many of the puzzles. A lot of them are to do with perspective, which also reminded me strongly of The Witness. Often you need to maneuver objects to the correct positions and line them up so they form a door or a key or some other element needed to progress. I do kind of regret that they never get very complex or sophisticated, but like I said, undemanding is not always a bad thing. Most of the rest of this first level revolves around filling a deep well with water, which brings to life a tree at its centre in another highly evocative scene. Not long after this you gain access to the giant tower that towers over the island. The door is opened via this device that lets you alter the time of day at will, and again I have to give credit to the simple but hugely effective lighting in this game. I really think it looks great. There's not much light in the tower itself, but it still looks rather awesome, with the pathways that light up as you move along them. It can get a little disorienting in here, but it's not too much of a struggle to reach the centre. When you manage that, you discover a stairway that leads ever upwards, and at the top you'll find... this. Another mysterious and awe-inspiring sight. Pass through the keyhole-like portal and you're suddenly in a very different place indeed. Is this the origin story of the boy's red scarf? Whatever it is, the dark, menacing clouds are an ill-fated omen. Fade to white, and then... onto the second level. This place is immediately a good deal more sinister than the sunny, vibrant island we just left. The boy finds himself amidst sculptures of sand, or perhaps they're more than just sculptures. Dark, faceless figures peer down from above. But fortunately your fox friend is still around, still prepared to guide you through whatever dangers lie ahead. I was genuinely glad to see the little guy again. He leads you out to daylight and another mechanism that allows you to control the time of day. This time, however, when you try to use it, this level has a definite antagonist. The giant bird is a constant threat as long as you're out in the open, so you have to dash from shelter to shelter. There's real danger here. It's quite a shift in tone from the first level. Apart from that though, the gameplay is essentially unchanged. There's a clear goal: reach the windmills and shut them down, thus unleashing storm clouds that prevent the giant bird from dominating the skies. There's no real need to go into the specifics of what this involves. It's basically the same platforming and light puzzle solving as the first level, but I will take this opportunity to talk about the mechanics of the platforming. Rime basically follows the trend of a lot of other modern games. You traverse the environments by seeking out subtly highlighted ledges that you can grab onto, then haul yourself up to higher ledges or else leap across a gap to hang from your fingertips once again. If you've played any modern action-adventure games, you've probably encountered something like this, and I kind of regret how prevalent this system has become. It tends to rob games of any real sense of exploration or freedom. You're not making your way through a large hazardous environment, you're following a predetermined breadcrumb trail of carefully placed ledges. Actually though, Rime suffers less from this than many other more substantial games. I suggested before that Rime is more about making your way through an evocative environment and drinking in the scenery and the low-key narrative than it is about challenge, so these inorganically designed pathways aren't so bad here. It's in games that are ostensibly about action and skill that I find them much more destructive to the enjoyment I get from the game. Anyway, as the sky grows darker, new creatures come out into the open. These shadows aren't actually a threat, not yet. In fact, they seem more scared of you than you are of them, and dissolve into nothingness when you approach. Once all 3 windmills have been shut down, the dark figures mass an assault on the giant bird, which is cast down from its perch in flames. And I actually feel sorry for the poor thing. Yes, it killed me numerous times when I was too lackadaisical about seeking cover, but it was just protecting its nest, and now it's dead. Or not. This is one of the very few occasions in this game where I got frustrated. I couldn't figure out how to survive this section. The bird always knocked me off the bridge. You actually get an achievement if you let this happen several times. It's called Wrong Direction, and I took this as a hint that maybe you weren't supposed to run away from the bird, but rather run towards it and dodge out of its way or something. But no, that didn't seem to work. I even ignored the bridge altogether and went back down the way I'd come to see if I could find another way up to the other side, but to no avail. Eventually I got past it by holding up on the analog stick before the brief cutscene finished, so I started running at literally the first possible instant, and that did it. Maybe I'm just stupid and missing something obvious, but it really does seem to me that the margin for error here is just too small. In any case, with that done I was able to ascend to the next level of the tower and proceed down the tree-lined path I found there, and so on to the next level. Now things start to get a little disorienting. If you proceed straight ahead, you end up right back where you started. The passages on either side of the room don't take you to where you'd expect. I should perhaps have found this creepy and disturbing, but there's an atmosphere of ancient mystery to this place that made it seem simply wondrous instead. When you navigate your way out of this impossible place, you find something else impossible, a hallway that has no end, until you turn around and look at it from the other direction. It's another appealingly surreal touch. There are darker areas in this level, within which lie the corpses of long-forgotten machines. You can bring back a spark of life with one of the glowing orbs dispensed by what seems like an archaic vending machine, but for now it's only a spark. These deeper, darker reaches are also home to more shadowy figures, but these ones aren't afraid of you. They come after you, and although they're slow moving, if you allow them to get close enough, they'll suck the life out of you, along with your colour. They're easy enough to avoid, so they're only a minor hindrance, but they'll keep you on your toes. When you make your way back into daylight, you'll find a metallic core of the kind that belonged to the dead machines far below in the darkness. And once you find a way to imbue it with power, it seems to gain a form of consciousness. The only thing left to do now is find it a pair of legs. And now you've got your own personal robot to follow you around. It's a very simple design, but it still manages to be characterful and rather charming. A lot of the puzzles from now on rely on using the glowing orbs to direct your robot companion to certain spots in order to activate elevators or open doors. There's still nothing particularly challenging to it, but it's a welcome change to the puzzle solving formula. The level culminates with the activation of a major power source, which brings to life a whole host of robot friends. Which is good, that first robot you constructed was starting to seem a little lonely. They accompany you up to the next level of the tower and along the watery path towards the next and final level. Before that though, we get another glimpse of the boy on the boat at sea. The red-robed figure is there too, but is swept overboard. The boy tries to save him, but is only able to snatch away the scrap of fabric he wears as a scarf. And now we know why he does so. The last level is the simplest, both in terms of its physical structure and visual aesthetic, and I think it looks remarkable. This may actually be the best representation of heavy rain that I've ever seen in a game. Other games may have done it with more sophistication and realism, but I can't think of one that's done a better job of creating the feeling of rain that soaks every surface, fills every crevice, permeates the air and chills you to the bone. This is a very bleak place, and that feeling of bleakness is accentuated by one small but significant change. In the first level, filled with warmth and light, when you hit the button to shout at something to activate it, without actually being in range of anything to activate, the boy would simply hum a pleasant tune. Now though, when you press that button, he lets out a soft, mournful cry. It's genuinely quite moving to witness him in this dreary, depressing place. In another echo of that first level, your goal here is to find 4 small statues in order to activate the larger one in the central area. When you did that in the first level, you gained your foxy guide. This time though, now you have become like the robed figure that you pursued at the start of the game, just a colourless form adorned with red. Everything seems very dark now, but the shadowy figures line the way to one last beacon of light and hope. If you manage to break the chains that hold it in place, it took me a moment to realise that this is the same tower you've spent the game climbing, only now it's inverted. You descend, and at the bottom is one last transition. Finally we see the truth of what happened in the storm at sea. It wasn't the father who was lost, it was the son. The red scrap of fabric that he's been wearing throughout the game is in fact the one vestige of his life that his father was able to hold on to. Now, in a world devoid of colour and life, he sees his father for the last time. And then, he stands on the precipice of a star-filled abyss. He leaps into the unknown, and so passes out of this world and perhaps into the next. But then comes the game's tragic, breathtaking denouement. Now we control the father as he finally summons the resolve to enter his dead child's bedroom. If you found any hidden items in the game, you can interact with them here. And this is why I really wish I'd taken the time to find more, as they give you insight into the origins of the things you've seen. The wind chimes are like the robots you brought to life. The windmill is a miniature version of the ones you encountered on the second level. And the fox is, of course, just like the one that guided you through your journey. And then, just before you leave the room, you see your son one last time. You embrace him as he fades away, and then you finally let go of that which you have held on to since his death. And yes, I cried. I don't mind admitting that. I'm an emotional kind of guy. I cried again when I went back and watched the footage I'd recorded. I'm not going to comment on whether Stunt Chicken was right when he said no other game matches this for emotional impact, but it sure as hell had an impact on me. It's different to the emotions that Ori and the Blind Forest stirred. That was a much more complicated tale of decline and sacrifice and renewal, whereas Rime is focused on the deep, profound emotion of grief. Apparently the most common interpretation is that the entire game took place in the grieving mind of the father as he attempted to come to terms with the loss of his son. I don't quite see it that way though. I think the game depicts the son on a journey between life and death, tethered to the world he left behind by the red scarf he wears and which his father cannot let go of. The boy is seeking out his father one last time to let him know that the time for acceptance has come, and in this quest he is ultimately successful. It's interesting to note, incidentally, that once you finish the game and unlock the ability to access any level, you'll see that they're named after the traditional 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And once you know this, the themes become obvious. The first level, denial, is a sunny paradise where grief cannot intrude. Anger features a bird that really doesn't seem to like you. Bargaining involves forming a mutually beneficial relationship with a robot. Depression is, well, it's a grey, bleak, rainy city of stone. I think that speaks for itself. Acceptance, the denouement, also needs no explanation. I suppose these names lend weight to the theory that the entire game is from the father's perspective, but I still like my interpretation. So ultimately, what do I think of this game? Is it good? Is it great? It certainly made me feel things, strong things, and that counts for a lot. And it looks fantastic and sounds just as good. It was an absolute pleasure to traverse. But it's undeniably a limited game. It's not a long game, although it does include plenty of secrets that I didn't find, and the ones I did find were quite satisfying to discover. More to the point though, it doesn't offer anything particularly exciting or interesting in terms of gameplay. Yes, the environments are fantastic, but what you do in them isn't all that noteworthy. The word that still comes to mind is undemanding, along with the word pleasant. That's what Rime is, a pleasant, undemanding action-adventure, but with a real gut punch of emotion. And for me at least, that makes it absolutely worth playing. Well, thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you think I've deserved it, or the subscribe button if you think I've really deserved it, or possibly the unsubscribe button if you're disappointed that I couldn't make any progress with the Immortal. Again, I'm sorry Silvertane78, it was just too much for my feeble, senile mind. Until next time though, get off my lawn.